Welcome everyone to our roundtable discussion. You're probably here because you saw the description of wanting a space for us to gather and talk about how we will meet our students day one, week one, and recognize the trauma that has taken place really for almost 3 years now, but particularly at the end of last semester. And now with the alert that we received last evening, I have to say, when I saw that there was an alert, that I was triggered. And I know that the alert went out to students as well. And I'm sure that those who were with us last semester were triggered as well. And so it's extremely timely. It's not just, this happened a month ago, month and a half ago. We have had some really hard things happen in our college community. And of course, our larger community, country and world. So I know that I was in another meeting with Lauren, and I know that she was on campus when the lockdown occurred last November, and I was in a gathering where she shared, Gail was as well, and just wanting to brainstorm and share ideas about what are our plans for showing up for our students, recognizing that we have experienced trauma ourselves. Oh, and I also want to mention that I specifically asked Brandy to be here today as not just our overall awesome person, but a counselor to give us counselor perspective and be in our space to help us out. So I'm wondering, Lauren, if you wouldn't mind just kind of starting with what you shared with me about what you have done and what you plan to do for your students beginning of semester.
Sure. So a little background about me is that my husband is a veteran and has some PTSD stuff. So if any of you were at the active shooter training yesterday, where as soon as you walk in a room, scan where your exits, don't have your back so you can't see someone, we already do that in our household. So like and I've gone to probably every active shooter training since I was hired at CRC. I was doing sweeps of rooms when I was an adjunct, and I'm like, that door opens to the exterior. If someone would come through this door, I wouldn't have enough time to get over here. How am I going to secure this for my students? And I don't know that I ever really, it was just kind of like, well, you just got to do what you got to do in the situation. But it's been getting way more like really, really real in the last couple years and semesters. And I was on campus, I was in my office during the lockdown. And those of you who were in the earlier Flex workshop this morning, I confess that I also have the news on 24/7 when I'm home. And so I've seen and heard all the coverage of all the school shootings that have happened since we've been off campus in terms of COVID. So with all that, right, I'm like alone with my thoughts in my office, like texting family members, doing the I love you texts and all that stuff. I didn't have any of my students on campus when it happened. I had a group that had come, they picked up equipment and they left. And while I was sitting in my office, I got a bit of a heads up that something was happening. Someone above my pay grade was kind of walking through the hallway, and they came to my office door and they were like, I'm just going to close this, just stay put for a little while. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And then I heard through my closed office door, I work in the library building, by the way, someone was trying to like get in from the exterior, and someone walked to the door, opened it and said, some stuff's going on right now. It might be better if you go to your vehicle, or if you come in, you might be in the library building for a long time. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I started messaging my students who were off campus. And I said, I don't know what's happening, but I think something's happening. Don't come back. Stay wherever you are. Don't come back to campus until you hear from me. And like 4 minutes later, like, because I've looked at the timestamps, 4 minutes later is when the announcement went out. And so there was that. I had a colleague who was in a separate area of the library with students in the radio lab. And she, as an instructional assistant, was trying to manage students in multiple small spaces and get them in. And one of those students had a health-related challenge when the lockdown and the all clear came through. And then I was trying to assist with that at the end of the main event. So in my syllabus anyway, I have safety sections because I teach production classes. So like wear gloves when you're working with hot lights, don't come into the TV studio with sandals on because something could drop on your foot and injure you. So those are already in there. Don't hang out of a car window with a camera while it's driving, like all that kind of stuff. But I've also had stuff updated every semester about COVID safety protocols. This is what you need to do. This is the masking guidelines, all that. And I've also had students must follow emergency instructions for your health and safety and the health and safety of those around you. And when I get to that point in my syllabus, when I'm in person with my students, so this is going to be the first time I'm going to do this in a while, I go, let's look at the room we're in right now. Where are the doors? Where are the windows? Does that window open? Could we get out of here? If I'm in a computer lab, I say, I'm never going to tell you to pick up a computer and throw it. But if it comes to that, you have my permission. Rip that monitor off the thing and throw it at somebody coming in the door if we need to. If we're in the TV studio. Okay, let's all think. Where's a hiding space we could be if we needed to hide? What's an improvised weapon we could use if we needed one? To my students that go in the field, can you use that tripod, open it up and swing it at someone if you needed to? Not that I'm asking you to do that at all, but if you needed to, could you do that? And so I try to talk about, like, we're going to talk about it. I don't want to like churn on it for a long time, but if we have the thought now, we'll be prepared if, just like in a fire alarm, where are we going to go? Like if we had to leave this classroom right now in a fire alarm from here, and then I talk about where we are on campus, we're going to come out this door, we're going to take a right, and we're going to walk towards the fountain. That's where we're going to go. Find the fountain. That's where we're going to meet if we need to, if there's a fire alarm right now. So those are the kind of things that I try to go through. I've had the really depressing realization in the last couple of years that my students that I'm getting now have had these talks and actual trainings in their schools for years and years and years before they get to me, which is heartbreaking. Yeah, so when I say, what are our three options? Option one, run. If there's danger, we go the opposite direction. If it's hide, okay, let's talk about the option for hiding. What would be a place where, I'm going to close the door. I keep my classroom doors locked, and I put a wedge in the door, and I tell students on the first day, the wedge is there. It's going to be easier just to kick the wedge out and close the door than me having to go outside and try to fumble with keys. Like that is a safety thing. If you need to use the bathroom, use the bathroom. Just make sure you put the wedge back in the door so you can get back in and it doesn't disrupt class later. So that's something that I do. And I can screen share, and I have one of my syllabi kind of pulled up with some of the safety language that might or might not be helpful. So this is my part 2 safety on campus part. I put in here the link to how students can download the Rave Guardian app. I just think that's a really good thing. This is something that after the lockdown last semester, I think it was Martin Morales said that a number of his students got scam likely on their phones, and stuff just went to voicemail and no one was picking up. I have the Rave Guardian app on my phone, and when I get the message, it says Los Rios emergency. Like it leaves very little to be to the imagination as to who is calling me at that moment. So I encourage students to put that in their phones. I also give them the Los Rios dispatch number on all of my syllabi, even for lecture only classes. A tip that I got from a prior training about how to work with dispatch so you can get help where you are, was to be able to tell them where you are on campus. So I make sure students know what our classroom number is and or what part of campus we're on. To have them say the name of the college. That CRC sounds like ARC, sounds like FLC. So if they say Casumnes, there's no question as to which campus they're on. Be able to identify the type of emergency you're having. Is it a car, is it a fender bender in the parking lot? Did someone just collapse in front of you in line at the cafeteria? You know, what is it that's going on? And then if you can describe victim information, like in a medical emergency, you know, be able to provide that.
Lauren, that is so helpful. We have a lot of people asking maybe okay, we have some, let me go back to the chat. So we have, if you could share, you're sharing on your screen.
Yeah. And I can get the link to where to go on the school website, and I'll put that in chat as soon as I don't have the screen anymore.
Perfect. And how smart to make sure students know what is their classroom and what part of campus, and articulate clearly what campus it is.
I'll say, like, this is in my syllabus and I literally talk about it every semester that I have in-person classes. And when I was calling about a medical situation for one of my students, I was like, okay, I'm in the radio lab. It's library 101. And they're like, ma'am, what campus are you on? I was like, oh my God, like, right. Cause Sumner River College, I know there are people on campus. I can see them, but like they're doing other stuff right now. But I need someone to please come help me. And the student was like, I don't want an ambulance. I don't want medical attention. And I'm like, I am afraid that if I let go of this student, they're going to collapse. I need someone to come over here and check on this person right now.
Awesome. And Gail brought up a good question about prefacing the discussion. And I think that's another thing we wanted to talk about today is how do we do that without traumatizing them further?
I will so totally defer to Brandy on this one. This is where I get caught, is if I do my standard, the images we're about to see in this clip might be triggering, especially if you have experience and blah, 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 you can leave the room. I don't want anyone leaving the room because it's important that this information gets out. But I also, having a bit of vicarious experience with PTSD, well, probably I have PTSD now too, but with PTSD, that I don't want someone cycling and then they're just sitting there spinning and I can't get them back to move on to the next thing. So that's, Brandy, thank God you're here.
Hello, everyone. Thank y'all for inviting me. So I'm glad to be here. And so just so everyone knows, I am still a licensed therapist. I don't practice anymore, but I do clinical supervision still. And ironically, I decided today to make trauma my day because I left a 2-hour training this morning I held for an agency in the Bay on trauma-informed care. And so trauma is where I'm at today. So let's rock with it. So that I'm fine, by the way. I hold space very well for me having these conversations. Thank you, Lauren. As someone that is prior military, a police officer. So thank your husband for his service as well, and for your service, unknown, right? Meaning all the things you do, seen and unseen, to support him. So one thing I want to say, I'm sad to say this has become normal, right? That I didn't grow up with this reality. Who else understands that too? We didn't grow up with the reality of, right. And so this is now, sadly, a normal conversation to be had. And so, but it's also not normal. So let's own that as well, right? This is not normal, right? That we have 8-year-olds doing earthquake drills and mass shooter drills in the same week, right? Because my daughter had her first drill, right, for a shooter on campus earlier, in 2022. So the first thing I want to say is we need to know that we're going to naturally, as human beings, be in a little bit of a upheaval, right? For those that track their own heart rate, I bet right now your heart rate is a little bit up already, right? And we've been exposed to no traumas yet, right? We're just talking about how to stay safe from trauma, right? And our bodies are already ready, right, to see what to do to keep us safe. And so I want us to always think about like just the wonderful things that Lauren was just sharing. Some of us do naturally. I am also that person that never sits with my door to the back of a room. I will never do it, even in a restaurant, right? But that comes with a cost, right? I come with a slight shuffle in a restaurant that's odd to other people. Like, oh, I can't sit there. They're like, what's wrong? And I'm like, you switch, right? So it causes us a little bit of undue stress sometimes in our day, right? And so as we all approach this and trying to keep our students safe on campus, know that some of you may feel a little bit of stress or a lot or any range in between. And I want to normalize that as well. Okay, that I'm not expecting any of us to come in stress free. I'm not stress free, right? I'm not, right? I'm coming in aware that this conversation is going to cause me some stress as a human being, worried about the safety of the people I care for, my students, and also my colleagues on campus, right? And then friends, right? Um, so I want to just own that part. Um, Going back to the question about the triggers. When me and Leslie briefly talked about this, I said something to the effect of therapists have not figured out how to treat mass shootings. I'm going to start with that. I think that's just honest, and that's all I got today. Right? Is honesty. So therapists have been talking for years now. How do we look at mass shootings as part of how people respond, right? Not just the people that were victimized by it, but those that were through vicarious ways, right? Through news media, through having family or friends in that, whatever it may have been, or hearing someone on campus have to lock themselves in a room for 2 hours, and you know that person and the stress they were under. Like, how do we deal with that as a society? We have not created a clean answer, to be honest with y'all. I wish I had like a clear, this is what we do, right? The reality is, this is what we do, right? So let's thank Leslie and Lauren for bringing us here. This is what we do. We sit together and we talk about what we can do and where our limitations are, and we're honest best we can, right? And so I will be getting Lauren's permission to use what she created for safety, right? Because I haven't thought about it yet for my syllabus, but now I have, right? So now I feel a little bit more comfortable going into syllabus and saying, hey, by the way, part of our class rules is safety. Safety also extends to blah, 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 right? And yes, students may get triggered, and you can let them know that this is a hard conversation, and no one has yet figured out how to not make it hard because it's not predictable, right? We are a people that love to predict things to work on, right? And this is unraveling everybody because we can't predict it. I can't decide when I'll have to do this. No one going to tell me when, right? I have to know that it's going to interrupt my day at some point, right? Be it a text message, be it on campus. So we need to just own that it will interrupt our day. And we have to immediately jump into, what do I need in a moment to kind of just start realizing this could happen? And this is a new reality. So radical acceptance is the first thing I offer. And that comes with sadness for me to say that, right? That we all present have decided we radically accept that at any point during our careers where we're not armed, we don't want to be armed probably for most of us. We want to be in our classrooms and what we do, that we have to accept this new responsibility to keep people safe. Right. So I just want to sit with some of that for a minute and see where people's thoughts are. And then we'll talk a little bit more about trigger warnings and all those things. But I just want people to be present and sit with things like this because we don't get time to in the moment. We won't. Right. In the moment, we will not get 2 minutes to decide what to do. We have less than 10 seconds, Lauren, to decide what to do in these moments to save lives? Less than that, sometimes 5. Right. So let's just talk for a moment about that. I'll take any questions, by the way. Nothing offends me at this point, meaning I've had the deepest parts of these conversations for years. I'm okay.
Brandy, if I can just kind of piggyback on what you were saying about the less than 10 seconds, I think that that's depending on what the situation is, and right. So the alert that went out last night, precautionary lockdown, stay away from the parking center. Cool. I wasn't on campus anyways. It was very easy for me to do that. But the alert that went out in November was immediately lock doors, immediately get away from windows, and meet, right, which just like really, raised it. And it didn't say anything about active shooter. It just said lock your door and get away from it. But I think that a lot of people, that's where people's minds went, because it had that immediacy to it.
Right.
And something I think about and struggle, which is why I do want to talk about it the day I go over the syllabus, is if I have 25 people in a room, 30 people in a room, or for those of you that teach the really big classes, you have 40 something people, 50 something people in a room. Everyone is immediately, their brain's going to go somewhere else. And I don't know where it's going to go. And I don't know where or how, and I'm not trained in I worked in movies and TV. I'm not trained. I mean, I can set up an action sequence, but I'm not trained to do this like in the real world. And I think that that's something that I got from one of the active shooter trainings I went to a couple of years ago, was the person running it said, I'm going home to my family tonight. And they said, I want you to repeat it. I am going home to my family tonight. And that's the mindset you need to have. If something goes down, you need to have that mindset. And someone was like, well, what about if I have a student who, and they were like, you are going to go home tonight to your family. That's what you need to. And for anyone who was at the workshop yesterday on active shooter, and then we're at the workshop this morning about like centering ourselves and dealing with the trauma that we're kind of all carrying around. I think that those are super different, right? Like the idea of you get out, like you leave, you're responsible for yourself. Everyone's an adult, they're going to figure it out, but you need to take care of yourself. So I think that that's something where, yeah, it's traumatizing to talk about it and to think about it and to accept I could not come home by going to work to teach a class today, but that that's where we are, and that by not sharing information with our students, I don't think we're helping them. And I certainly don't go into like a lot of details, but like, like we're going to have a plan. And so having a plan is better than not having a plan. So let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with something. And maybe that's not super healthy, but like that's how I'm trying to approach it, in that when panic takes over, nothing gets done. And if you have a lot of people panicking all at the same time, it's going to be a really bad situation. People get hurt. People, like, bad things can happen. Not that bad things can't happen when you're organized, because that totally does happen too, but better to have a plan than not have a plan, is how I try to approach it with my students. But I should probably get better at the lead up language for that.
That's good, Lauren. I don't think anything about what you just said is a problem. I feel like it's honest, and we need honesty to deal with this. Anyone else want to? Because I just want to answer questions. Because for trigger warnings, the response I have is somewhat a little bit simple, but it's the questions I think people have that need to be answered, maybe. But don't judge me. I read the room based on the Zoom screen right now, so I could be totally off. Who knows? Okay, so trigger warning. When it comes to safety, you may not have to have a trigger warning, meaning what Lauren just said, this is a requirement of me just keeping us all safe in this space, and this is what I may do to do that, is just awareness, right? I don't know if that's something that may trigger, right? You're not going to say, all right, if a shooter came in and they had this kind of gun and they did it, you're not, oh, that would be for sure trigger warning, like, whoa, 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 right? But it's like, no, like if we prepare for earthquake, if we prepare for flooding, we all have to have a conversation about it, and none of it is pleasant, right? We don't look forward to it, but we know it's for our safety. And so if you have a student, though, let's say you do this in your class, and maybe that student for some reason was not aware you were ever going to say such a thing at the start of a class on campus. Maybe they just did not know, and that student becomes triggered. What I say to do with that student is to take time to talk with them after and see if they need more care, either through counseling, meaning the counseling department, through one of the resources we have for mental health care on the website, is to offer them a little bit more, but make it plain. anyone could be triggered by the thought of being involved in this. All the healthy people I know would be. Right. All of us want to go home, like Lauren just said, right? So I would be triggered, like, oh my God, how do I keep everybody safe? But also I want to go home too. Right. And so we're holding all of that. And so if we have a moment where we need to say, this is hard to hear, right? But it's part of safety. Let's hear it now so we know what to do if it happens. We don't want it to, but if it does, we're all better prepared if we're well informed. And so ironically, this is what trauma-informed care looks like in this setting. This is trauma-informed care by saying, I care enough about you as faculty to make sure my syllabus, to make sure my trainings I go to make sure this, to make sure that I do to keep us safe if something happens outside of our control. And that's a lot to give because it was not in my resume, I don't believe, for this job to do such a thing. Even in my profession, it wasn't in a resume to do this, but we're doing it. We're all doing it. No matter what discipline we teach, we're all doing it now. So I'll pause there because that's all I have. Thank you.
Can I have a question? Like, is there any like general guideline on campus-wide, like for like specific situation like November event and yesterday, such event, and we can what to do as a kind of general guide for what to do in actual classroom situation? So because in November I wasn't in the class, it was okay for me. But if I did think about it, if I were there, and it was really difficult to deal with it if you don't know what to do in advance, right? So that's another thing. And then also, if that kind of November types of event came again, and afterward they send email, like school send email, what to like go online, but maybe some faculty might have not option like that. Like they are not prepared online or something like that. So we need a little more specific general guideline what to do in such case. I think that's my feeling when I experienced in November and yesterday.
Lauren, Leslie, you want to comment too? Because I'm going to fall back onto the trainings we've had, and then the basic things you covered in the beginning, like always be present of your doors, lock your doors. So is that okay? So I'll let Lauren talk.
Yeah, there should hopefully for all of us in your physical space in your classroom, or if you also do labs, also in your labs, there should be something near the door or the light switch that is like a paper thing that is like, in the event of a power outage, in the event of a fire, in the event of a earthquake, in the event of a toxic spill, in the event of a nuclear disaster, and it's there. And I was teaching one time, and this is when I was still an adjunct, and some alarm was going off because one of my spaces is near the police station on campus. And so I just kind of like casually strolled over and like picked up the emergency thing, like, what should I be doing right now? Like, what is this alarm that I'm hearing? And I had a student who totally called me out on it. Was like, well, I love that our teacher is just now looking at what we should be doing, like in the case of an emergency. And I was like, look, man, I mean, like we're friends now, but I was like, look, dude, like, come on. I'm a part-timer. I like barely have keys. I don't know what's going on. Just give me a second. So there's that. So if on Friday, if you're going to be on campus for convocation and you can get into your physical classroom, you could look that over. And then my instructional assistant, and I can double check with her because I'm not sure which training it was, but she did a training when she was first hired, and it's exactly that stuff. What's the difference between a shelter in place? What's the difference between a lockdown? What's the difference between this? And so that might give you some other options. I just kind of quickly scanned the link that I put in chat. That's for the kind of general safety stuff on campus. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, it has information about the Rave Guardian app, but there's also other information about like the emergency phones. I talk about that with my students. Like if you need help, pick up one of the phones with the blue light on top. That's going to immediately connect you to dispatch. I've told my students, if you see like a fight breaking out, because this was something at a training a couple years ago, call for assistance. Don't put yourself in the middle of it, because I think a faculty member got like injured trying to break up a fight a couple years ago. And so there's that too, as other options for other safety related, you know, things. Like, don't walk around campus just taking off the blue light phones and just leaving them disconnected, because that'll
I mean, I like,
hopefully concern dispatch and send people, but then they're sending them where there's not an emergency.
I mean, I really like your Canvas pages. Can you share that to us?
Yeah,
Or-
I'll share again. Oh, you mean like share my language?
Yeah, I mean the information, because we can change it for different faculty, but general guidelines, I like that. So
Okay, yeah. I can do a cut and paste and try to put it in chat, maybe.
okay. Yeah.
And then if you'll indulge one more time, I'll show a different part of my Canvas where I have other like resource things,
Right.
including like the telehealth, mental health link for
Yeah,
students. So like,
yeah, that's
they know
also
where it is, like in their course
because
content.
it's, I mean, school already started next week, so it's kind of hard to get all this information at once.
I'm super with you. I'm all about the cheat
That's
sheet.
why it's useful to have a sample. So.
Yeah, so this is just like, I mean, everyone does their Canvas different, but like, here's my syllabus, here's my course calendar. I have advice to students from prior semesters. And then I have like additional support services. So here's like technical support for things within my department, but then I have the free telehealth services. And I'll click on this link, see where it goes, and then I'll put the link in chat as well. So you guys can have that if you want to have it in your, like, so students don't have to go digging through other stuff, because our website is pretty cumbersome, I think. But I'll share that as well.
Thank you.
And Lauren, if it would be easier to email it to me, I can forward it to everyone in this room.
I can do that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone who shared their concerns and comments. I'm wondering if others have things that they do already, or maybe what you started doing after the lockdown, that you might want to share. Hi,
So
Heather.
I wanted to share a couple of things. I was on campus when there was an active shooter, I don't know, it seems like 10 years ago, and we were locked in for quite some time. And I had a couple of people who were freaking out, and what I just did was continued to lecture. And and it was a 3 to 4:20, and it was like 5:30, and they're like, "Are you going to continue talking?" And I was like, "Yeah, that is exactly what I'm going to continue doing." And we're going to keep we were doing the definition argument. We're going to keep going through exercises, and I'll give you this time back later. And I think just kind of, we couldn't leave. We needed to keep our minds off of it. And so kind of going with the flow, actually just being unflappable. And one guy who was clearly nervous and thought we should all huddle in the corner together, said that next class, "You were really worried, weren't you?" And I was like, "Yep, I was really worried," because I knew he was really worried, and had probably triggered some things for him. But for me, I find that my best way to handle stress is just to keep moving. And in that situation, it happened to work for us. Of course, there are other ones where it's not as helpful. I had a student who was very sick in class, and threw up what I thought was, I thought he was pouring 32-ounce drinks on the floor. He was throwing up so much. And what happened was he completely lost his blood pressure, and he couldn't even move. We couldn't get him out of the class, and everyone just sat there. And I was like, "You guys need to get out of here. It's a biohazard." And they're like, "But we're learning." We pushed him outside, and we got the student into an ambulance. And when I went to call his emergency contact, it was him. And so what I do is when I'm starting classes, I tell students these anecdotes, and I tell them in a way that, you know, uses a little bit of humor, like, and kind of demystifies, like, things happen. Everyone came through this fine. And if we're prepared and have the right emergency contact info and et cetera, then we're not going to have an issue. So let's be prepared now. And so I'll run some of those things like the emergency numbers and whatnot, with the idea that things do happen, but they usually happen when we're not prepared. And so kind of keeping that in mind. And then the poor student, he said, he's in the ambulance, and I call him and he goes, said, I'm just calling to see who your emergency contact is. And he said, call my grandma. I was like, okay, but I need your grandma's number. So I hope you can give it to me now. It's just one of those things where, you know, you're ready, it's not going to happen.
Thank you, Heather. Ooh.
One thing I want to bring in is we had talked a little bit about, like, after these things occur. Leslie, if you need to go ahead and speak, let me know. I was just going to add on to what she was just saying. So when we come off of that, sometimes when we dealt with something like what Heather described, so you described that with such humor and compassion. I'm still going to send you though some carrying energy through the universe. That was a lot to carry, and you carried it with your students really well. So I just want to own that and validate that for you. Right, bring snacks. I'm about the snacks always, Lauren. That's not even a debatable thing. Yeah, I like candy, snacks, water in my office for students when they drop in to see me back in the day for office hours. But one thing I think we are not aware we have access to, which is an employment assistance program, EAP. And so when the time is right, I want to talk about that, because when we come off of these things, there's ways we give our students great resources. We are so good at that. I love this campus. And I want my colleagues to have the same and to know how to access their wellness too. After dealing with something like that, they need to unpack it with a professional. So I wanted to explain what that looks like. And so when the time is right, I didn't want to do it at an inappropriate time, but I wanted to bring it up because that's also part of the closing this up, right? We talk about if a student is triggered and we give them resources, right? And we pull them to the side and offer it. What about us? We deserve some resources sometimes too, right? So what that can look like if we access EAP. So let me know, Leslie and Lauren, if there's a space you have for that already. I didn't check the agenda, I'm sorry. And I'll talk a little bit more about what EAP can look like.
There was no agenda.
Oh, yay.
It's just a round table.
I love it.
Yeah. So
Brandy, you think we're so organized?
Lauren,
you're so awesome.
you lead our council of chairs meeting. You're always organized until you told me you said you don't have an agenda. I was like, what? I always thought you did. Yeah. Okay. So do we all know what EAP is? I don't want to assume. Yeah.
I just want to say that I've heard about it. I have it in my syllabus, but I have never personally used it or know anyone else's experiences using it. So I would appreciate knowing, you know, how it works and if it is something that we definitely want to share.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment on it before I talk a little bit about what it is? And do we have Cigna? I guess I should ask Sabrina these questions. I feel like she named the kind of provider we have for EAP. Do you know? It's okay.
That sounds
It
familiar.
could be. It's okay.
Okay.
I'll explain it, and then I can ask Sabrina later and give it to everybody.
Okay.
So what people don't know is that long time ago, and I'm going to reference something very in my generation. Remember this inappropriate term of people going postal? You remember that? We used to say this back in what, early 2000s-ish, and we had like this whole movement of like people going postal. Well, it wasn't just the postal workers, and they're just capturing them on camera, but it was everybody going postal, right? And so employers decided we should do better. People shouldn't get to this point and blow up at work when we know they're not okay, right? We should do something before then. So federal law came in, federal law said employers with a certain size of people are required to have this resource available to employees, period. no explanations, right? What that service offers is you get immediate access to a licensed professional clinical mental health counselor immediately, and you have a phone session available immediately. So I, as a therapist, used it not in Los Rios, but in my previous employer, because I had a moment at work. I had a case that was just not okay to even read, and I was emotional. And my boss, being the boss that she was, she handed me the pamphlet that I've handed to many other employees. Like, what is this? She's like, Brandy, you, I think you should call EAP right now and talk to somebody. Just close your door, take a moment. I'm gonna just do it. I was like, but I'm a therapist. I don't need to do this. She was like, you are a therapist and you need to do this. So I reluctantly called the number, right? Because we all have that fear that when I call, they're going to find out some deep, dark secret I ain't got time to deal with in my workday, right? And it's not true. They are the nicest people I have met in my entire life. I don't know the woman's name I talked to that day, but she literally answered the phone. She asked what was happening. She said, okay, let's take quiet space. You have somewhere we can meet confidentially for 15 minutes. I said, yes, I do. She talked to me for 15 minutes. She said, what do you need after this? And I said, I don't know. She said, well, what I can do for you is using your insurance, I can schedule you with a therapist to continue with for 6 sessions for free. No medical insurance to go through. They will do all that for you, right? And you'll get 3 to 6 sessions for free, no hassle with that person that you can connect with immediately, right? So it can happen within an hour or two, that immediate. And then after, let's say that you had that person you connected with through EAP, through Cigna, and obviously Cigna's not connected with like Kaiser and some of the other parts of insurance we may have access to for those that have that. They'll tell you a list of people they can refer you to, and that process becomes tedious. But before then, they will give you those 6 sessions with whomever's available for you through Cigna. There's other names of features I can't think of, Aetna, a couple other names of providers. And so people don't use it. I was the people. I didn't use it, right? Until I knew how helpful it was. And I was so thankful then, right? And so it made me better as a supervisor, because I was at the time, to ease other people if I saw them struggling in their workday or something came up for them personal and they needed more support. I can say, hey, try this resource, close your office door or use my office. I don't care. I'll close my door and leave. Take this 15 minutes and have this first call. I promise it's not scary. And a couple people did it and they were thankful they had, right? So I want to just bring that in, that we have so many things available to us sometimes that we have not been offered to use. So we know how to use it and when it's helpful to us to use. So we don't use it. We do what we know. We push through it. We got that grit and grind, right? This generation, we love our grit and grind, right? But sometimes grinding it out causes some undue pain later on, right? So now I'll just pause again and see if there's questions about EAP. Oh, last thing, you don't have to have a diagnosis to call EAP. So let's clear that one up too. That's another myth I've heard people tell me. I'm not mentally ill. Well, nor am I on some days, but I still can call EAP. Yeah.
I just want to say this is super helpful. And when I think back on all my years, there are times I could have really benefited from that and didn't do it.
But we didn't know. You didn't know, right? We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know.
If I can just take a moment to say that I'm the biggest super fan of Brandy Jones Thomas and how awesome she is and how calming you are. And man, is it too late for me to switch majors, because I am
Never. We need you. Come on in. I'm just
You
kidding.
got any low enrolled in your department? Can I help you out? You
Oh,
want to send something?
always. Always.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Like, honest to God, you are the best. And you do so much. Like, I know I sent you an email for something. I'm like, we miss you in Senate, but oh, you're taking on like everything else on campus. I guess it's okay that you're not in Senate anymore, but like, oh my God, You're fantastic. And when
Well, I'm
Leslie
back in
asked about
Senate
this, I
now.
was like, can we get Brandy? I know she does everything all the time, but if we could get Brandy, that would be amazing.
I am back in Senate now, though. I cleared up my schedule, so I'm back in Senate. I'll see you on the 27th, I believe. Yes.
I completely agree. Just having Brandy in the room gives me this. Okay, it's going to be okay. Other questions, experiences you'd like to share, concerns?
I did, if I can. I've really appreciated all of the discussion and the resources, especially the ones that you had in your syllabus, Lauren. I have a lot of stuff in my syllabus that is kind of like, you know, counseling resources and things like that, but it didn't actually occur to me until I saw yours to say all the safety things that I don't have in them. And which kind of segues a little bit into, so I just, I'm an adjunct and teach acting and in the theater department. I just started over the summer. You know, I've been teaching for a long time in lots of different contexts, and I've had to do active shooter things in other places, but this the incident in November, and I think someone sort of spoke to this in a way, and I think the thing that I've been sitting with that I expressed to a friend of mine, but hard to, it feels kind of awkward, I guess, or uncomfortable, say, in a space with other teachers, simply because I don't know if, I'm sure people feel this way, but I left really obviously upset over the situation itself. I wasn't on campus that day. I was here in my other doing my other office things and my other job. And but I was really upset because it was the first time that I thought, like, out loud, am I really, is someone expecting me to be a human shield for my students? This is not why I became a teacher. This is not why I do what I do, and I love what I do. I love this. And it's not that I wouldn't, but I just felt like this is so unreasonable. This is one of those things that all the preparedness and all the things, like I even thought, as you were putting those resources about programming numbers and the cell phones, which I have for myself, but I thought, you know, one of the things in my acting class that I ask of my students is that it's a phone-free zone so that we can be present to do our work. And my classroom has 3 doors, one of which is to our scene shop, whose roll-up door is always open to the outside. And I just thought, like, you know, all of a sudden there's these other things I, you know, hadn't contemplated about asking them to have their cell phones off. I usually have mine on so I can keep track of time, but I rarely look at it except for timing purposes, for that very reason, to try to demonstrate to them what I'm asking of them, to be present and have no devices. And so part of it is like, there's just not a good answer to that. This is just the nature of having to address, so very much like with what you were talking about, Lauren. But I think that was one of the lingering things that I have been thinking about, especially that came up when I saw the alert yesterday, was just this thing, and also with the incident with the 6-year-olds in Virginia this past week. You know, I just thought, like, it's become, not only are these things become routine, but it feels like unspoken that obviously the trauma of enduring an event like that is one very big thing. And I know there are studies out there and research about the trauma it can inflict on all the people who go through the drills as well. But on top of it all, it just feels like, well, I don't feel like I've heard a whole lot of voices saying, but for us who are, you know, subject matter experts to come in and do this thing that we love to do, to even have to consider that is a whole other kind of category that that's the thing I left. I was angry. I told my friend, I'm so mad that I even have to think this way. And so that was one thing that I felt like I wanted to express, because I just think that's something that I don't hear other people talk about enough. And I kind of felt at first like, is this like the thing? Like, am I supposed to just accept that? Because I don't accept that. And like I said, it's not that I wouldn't do that for my students, but it's just that I can't believe that's a thing that I even have to consider, because I also, I graduated high school in the late 90s. I never had an active shooter drill in my life until I started teaching, which is a terrible association to me in the first place. Anyway, that's what I wanted to just bring to the table.
Ryan, thank you so much for your vulnerability and being willing to share that. And I have a feeling that what you articulated is what a lot of people have felt but not said. And so I really, really appreciate that. And I'm wondering.
Also, can I add it to that a little bit? But it's not just a question or anything, but just I have a concern, like because like this semester, like I have 3 online on ground classes, but it's not that fair. So one of my guess is all these things happening recently that might maybe people are scared. I don't know. So I'm not sure is it like overall trend in our school, or I'm just wondering what's going on. So that so I think we needed to be really think about like in actual practice in the classroom what we need to like change it, or like make really potential student to come, right? So that's my kind of concern, along with what Ryan says, right?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. As you were speaking, I went back to what Brandy said at the beginning, when she said, sadly, this is the reality. It's now a normal conversation, but this is not normal. This is not normal. And it is not historically something that happens. I mean, we have had incidents over the years, but I would say over the last few years, it's been more frequent and possibly more serious.
Ryan, if I can, yay, AME. I'm in a similar situation where when we're like in the TV studio or students are in a recording lab, like everything has to be off because it interferes with the microphones and it causes problems. And after what happened in November, I was talking to someone else who works in the library, and they were like, yeah, did you know that and they were like literally pointing to the TV studio. I'm like, yeah, I know that space pretty well, actually. They're like, yeah, this is here and you could hide over. I was like, right, I got it. I already used that classroom. But I'm like, but did you even know that that's where I work? And like, if an alert went out that someone should check on or bang on that door to let us know, stay locked in, because if our phones are off, we won't get that alert. We won't know. And they were like, oh my God, like, no, I had no idea. I didn't know who was in there or what was going on. So maybe this is a point for connecting with our neighbors on campus too. Like, is there, can David Folk keep his phone on? Can he let people know what's going on? Or is there an IA in a neighboring building that could, or, is there some kind of code we can use to kind of help each other? Because I think that's the same thing too. Like, yeah, I never used to bring my phone to class. I would just leave it. I would never even have it on me. And there's just been enough times when just the physical library building was closed for a reason and I couldn't get back to my office, and I found out about it because students were telling me like, oh no, the library building's closed now, or whatever. So I think that that's something that, like, who are your neighbors, like, and how can we check on them? Because that's part of it too. Because some of us really won't know what's going on, and that isn't good in an emergency. Like, we need to at least know that the emergency is taking place.
Yeah, and I don't think that is a common practice, Lauren, that you're assigned your classroom, you show up and you leave at your assigned times. But we don't make friends with with our neighbor, but what a good idea.
Let's have a mixer. Let's have a fun little mixer for each area of campus for no stressful reason, just to get to know who's in the classrooms near us. And then it's a good thing to know in case we need to know.
I got snacks. So I gotta say, I bring the snack.
I think, right, I think one way, you know, I know that AME division layout, but again, do you know who's in which classroom when? It's like how that could be an item during convocation this week, or an item at the next division meeting. Like how do you know who's where and when? For, you know, for that very reason, like you talked to the person in the library, they didn't know that you were actually in that space at whatever time, you know.
I mean, there is a schedule in the each room, but sometimes
Right.
they don't hold their class up there, or they change it. So we don't know sometimes.
I suppose the admin office knows who's where and when,
Right,
and
right,
would know
yeah.
that sort of thing. But I think, Ryan, you had another thing that's sort of an elephant in the room here with regards to, if I may bring it up, what you said about, and I hope I'm reflecting in this correctly, about a certain unspoken expectation of what your job is at a time of crisis or a lockdown or an active shooter or what have you, and you use the term human shield. What is our responsibility on the ground as a leader in the classroom with other adults? I mean, what is our responsibility? Was that something, is that okay if I brought that up? It feels like really like kind of.
I think it's very
Big.
important to know. Yeah.
Again, honesty. I said it. We're all about honesty. That's how we deal with things, is to be honest. So I'm available mentally to have that conversation. Those are ready to.
And I hope I didn't overstep a boundary or speak for you, Ryan.
No, not, I mean, I think that's a little bit at the, you know, learning the sort of the ropes of academia. It's like that is part of the, you know, like, I guess as, I don't know, as a student fairly recently, and when I was doing my MFA, you know, just like that was a different experience in my late 30s and early 40s as it was when I was an undergrad. And so some of those, I think it was Lauren who said one of your students had brought up after someone had brought up the thing about, oh, you were worried yesterday, you know, and I thought, I tell my students this in other ways all the time. And I like think of the first time I read Bell Hook's Teaching to Transgress, about like, I'm a human being, and sometimes I have to go to the bathroom. I'm a human being with a body, just like you are as a student. So you also, I think about that a lot. That informs a lot of what I try to do in my classroom, and try to, you know, and I was thinking in this exact way, it just feels like such a conundrum, both in the way that you just brought up, Gail, and then, you know, in general, like, of course, I want you to be safe. Of course, I want you to make it home. Like Lauren said, I want to make it home too, though. And I feel like feels a little in those spaces, like something that you're not supposed to say, you know, like, like I'm gonna make sure you're okay first, without any regard to my own safety. It's just, it just doesn't feel right, but it feels like what's supposed to be said. Or
that
or
it's in
acted upon.
conflict, like it has to be this or that. If I want that safety for myself, it means I don't want it for you. If I want it for you, it means I don't. And I think I don't think they're in opposition. They are both this and that. It has to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Both this and that. But it's hard. I mean, already just having this conversation and my heart wants to come up into my throat, you know. So
I mean, I was even feeling that way. What I was thinking as I was listening to discussion, I was kind of like, this has been on my mind since November. And I got like, I could just feel, you know, like I do a lot of somatic and body work and breathing stuff and the stuff I teach. So like, I know, but I started feeling that my heart was racing. Even was I going to bring this up to the group, let alone the experience of it. And so I think that's one of the things that I was like, oh my God, this is, it's so fraught. It's not that there, and it's what you said too, Gail. And I part of what I've been thinking about is it doesn't have to be framed that way, right? This is like improvisation in a way, right? It's not like an either or thing. And I know that, intellectually, and that's part of also the hard thing of thinking about some of these issues that we've talked about, and in the session this morning, the sort of mindfulness and centering kind of practices, those kinds of things are like, part of the reason we feel the need to do this, I think, is because we're not afforded the opportunity to do it. Like get this done. We need X number of things done. Like you're a machine and you're not a machine. It's exhausting to be in front of people all the time, even when you love it, and let alone all the paperwork things that I'm, sort of. I used to work in lobbying, and so like I'm used to the state of California and paperwork and like association management things. It's not new, but there's a piece of it that's like, and then there's this, all the other stuff you kind of like, okay, I could deal with that. I know this is a part of being in academia. I know this is a part of doing this kind of a job in this kind of a place. And I would not trade it, but I mean, I would change it, but the processes of it. But this is just one of those things that I think it also just, I used to work in the Capitol, and that was something I started working in the Capitol in 2002, right after 9/11. And it was, so I guess I feel like every time I've started at a new thing, it just feels like these safety things have been so big, and they were so prescient in every day. I mean, every day walking through metal detectors and all that kind of stuff. That's part of, I guess I got used to that, but this is a little different because I knew that the sergeants and the CHP were at the doors. And so it's not that something couldn't happen, but there was already people there immediately to respond. And I think that's what, and in terms of process, I do feel like as a new adjunct, I feel like there's a lot of stuff that just, they're kind of like, off you go. Now, you signed 1 million papers and now go and do the thing. It's going to take us 6 months to verify all this stuff, but you have to start day one and do all this other stuff. And I'm like, this is this can't be one of those things though that they just expect you to know or read a website, as hard as it is to talk about or go through those trainings, but this can't be a thing that folks just expect you to deal with, I think. Sorry,
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm taking a little
No,
long there.
absolutely. And I hope that you'll attend the adjunct faculty roundtable as well. Maisie is one of the facilitators of that, and that conversation can be continued. Yes. We only have like 3 minutes left, but I am so appreciative of everything that's been spoken today. And I think that we need to continue this conversation, and I'm going to allow Brandy to have the last few minutes to.
If I could take 30 seconds of Brandy's.
I'm sharing with Lauren, so we can have a minute.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Mine is
Well,
quick.
yeah, I just wanted to say kind of to what you were saying, Ryan, and to anyone else, if you were not at the active shooter training yesterday morning with Captain Valerie Cox, that in terms of I think the idea of like am I supposed to be the one to like stand in front of the door and keep the shooter out, God forbid that situation comes down. We're adults and our students are adults. And I specifically asked the question, what if I have a student that has the asterisk next to their name and they're a minor? Am I supposed to stay in a room with a minor if they refuse to leave when everyone else is leaving? And I was told no, that they are here as an adult. And I don't like thinking about that. Like, who am I gonna, you don't have to be the fastest person in the pack. You just have to be faster than the slowest person in the pack. You're trying to run away from a lion kind of a thing. But like that, that I for sure, I'm not getting hazard pay. And I don't know what I would do. I mean, I haven't been in that specific situation where I'm, dealing with that in reality, just, the what ifs, but there's that. So that is not expected of us. And you have every right to go home to your family, just like anyone else in that room does. And so there's that.
Thank you, Lauren. What I'll add, Ryan, again, when we're honest with each other, we can actually get to the deeper stuff, right? And so I just want to acknowledge that you've offered deeper healing and reflection on this, right? And so now we can all be more honest, because I thought the same thing kind of, but I've never said it in the way you did, right? Because I was in the military, and because I was a cop for 6 years, and because I got hazardous pay, and because I was there for 9/11, right? My view of what it means to protect people is very different, right? In this capacity now as a professor, then as obviously a therapist. And there is this tug, this human part of us that says, well, let me protect the slower people in the pack because I'm a little bit quicker. And that's a natural human thing, the human thought. Humanity is what we love, right? But also, we love our lives. We can all agree, right? And it's okay, like you said earlier, to hold both things. That I love my life and I love my students, and the things I've offered them is the best I have to keep us all safe. And that's all I got to do. That is literally my charge, right? No matter if for me what space I enter, I have the same kind of idea. Like I am responsible in my role best I can to keep these people safe. Beyond that, I can't do more because I just don't have it, right? I don't have it. I don't want it. I don't want a gun. I don't want anything like that. I want to be able to lock my doors, keep us all safe, and decide what to do next. And so that's what you all are doing. And so I want to honor that and also acknowledge that we naturally are protectors, right? We do it all the time, right? In different capacities, but we also have the right to protect ourselves. And I think that's what all these things are about, the safety protocols, the being honest with ourselves when we're in those moments or recovering from it. And what do we need to heal from it? I think that's what ties it all together. So when we have that moment and we're not sure, to challenge that message, right? And be told, nope, we don't expect you to do that. Nope, Ryan, you don't have to jump in front of the students. Nobody said that. Please don't do that. Right? Keep you all the way best you can. Right? And no one's going to shame or shun you for not doing that. And I still feel before we close, that's tied to some deep patriotism in the country without me going further with that. Why we feel the need to do those things, right? This need to step up beyond other people. That bravery thing has been pushed on us since Disney cartoons, right? So don't feel bad if you have it. We all have it. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry to end this. This has been really great. I think we should do this again. And so if you have other ideas about how to move forward with this, please let me know and we will make it happen. So I'm off to a spring 2023 convocation program run through. So I hope the rest of you have a great rest of your day.
Syllabi and Canvas prep. Yeah.
And I'm going to send Leslie the email like in 2 seconds in case anyone wants to borrow and adjust language from my syllabus for your syllabi, because nobody has time to do new drafts of stuff. So
yes, and I have all your names. So I'm going to forward it to you.
Thank you.
Take
Y'all
care.
have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.